Good morning everyone, and welcome back to Craft Eccentricity, and we're up today to do an Eiffel store. Let's make this, and as I've never done it before, it should be fun. Yeah, right, so what are we doing? I like the idea of stacking jars. So these two jar dies, I'm going to be using both of those. I'm going to be using Tombow markers, and I'm also going to be using a watercolour brush pen. There it is, an Old Faithful one all the way down there. So I'm going to be using those colours. I'm going to be using a Lena Craft foam and adhesive tape, and also a little bit of Dollar Tree glue if I need it. I think I'm going to do my Walmart watercolour cardstock, which is what I usually use, as I'm going to be using these. You can use them on regular cardstock, but I think I'm going to go for my Walmart watercolour, and I'm also going to use some craft cardstock as well. So I'm going to run off and die cut, and I will be right back. Okay, so I have been and die cut, and these are the two jars. I hope they're all fitting in the image there. So I'm going to go for that one behind and that one in front, because I kind of like that. That's all wispy, but this is solid, but it's still got these open spaces. So when we lay that one on top of that one, if my camera hasn't gone all blurred, there we go. Doesn't that look pretty? Yes, it does. And after I'd done that, I thought, how on earth am I going to put my card together? So what I did was I cut a sheet of the Walmart watercolour, and I did it in 5 3/4 by 3 3/4. That's how big that piece is. And the reason that I cut it smaller is because in one sheet of my craft cardstock, I just cut the die out because I wanted the aperture. So the idea is that is going to go behind there and is not going to be as big as the craft cardstock. Whoops, if I move it around, so that you're getting a rough idea of where I'm going. So you're going to get the white coming through the aperture, and then to back it, I've got a sheet of cardstock, and these are 6 by 4. So the other one is slightly smaller, so that I can get some foam tape under there. So I hope you can see that. Right, so what I want to do first of all is, I don't need to work on the craft areas. They're just going to be popped up with foam at the end. That's the way my brain is thinking. But I need a background for my jars. So I'm just going to go with a lovely bit of sky in the background. I don't know if I'm going to put any green in there. If I do, I'll go and grab my green pen, but let's have a look. Let's start with blue first, and I'm going to go with the darkest blue that I've got. And I'm always saying, Tombow, do everything in numbers. So this one is 452. I'm going to try and move that in as far as I can. I'm working sideways so that you can see it. Now this is an Lena Craft stamping block, and I use it for stamping, but I also use it for scrubbing off my markers so that I can use my watercolour brush. You can do any ink pad onto a block like this as well. So if you're new to paper crafting, it's a great way to sort of like not make a mess. So I just want to roughly go down with my blue. Now this paper has not been primed, and when you prime a sheet of watercolour cardstock, you just simply brush it over with water, and what should happen is your watercolour will only flood to the areas that you've wet. Now as I said, I haven't done that, so I'm basically just wetting it with colour. Now I do know that part of this is going to be hidden. Roughly 1/4 of an inch, I think, if my memory serves me correctly. And I think probably what I will do is I will do the other bit in green. Now if I've got little bits missing, it doesn't bother me, because it's supposed to be a cloudy sky, so a little bit blotchy, and that's absolutely fine with me. Now do excuse me, I'm just going to run off and find a green Tombow. I'll be right back. Right, so I've got my green one, and it is 158, which is, you know, it's a bit of an olive green. It's slightly dark, but I want to be able to see it. And I did clean that off with some kitchen paper. Now I'm going to spin my skyline around, and I'm going to do the green here. And once again, I'm just going to rub that. You can see it's quite a strong colour onto there. I haven't bothered to wipe my brush off because I'm okay with having a little bit of blue in my green, and I've added quite a bit of water, so you can see that. And once again, I'm not doing it perfect, and I may even go for a second coat. Not sure yet, or maybe just do the foliage on the flowers in the jar in a stronger, and have the background a lot more faded. So as I said, I roughly know that it's kind of like 1/4 of an inch that's going to be hidden behind that jar aperture that I've done. So I'm just squiggling this on. You know, there's no kind of rhyme or reason to the way that I'm doing it. I'm just blobbing it. Yeah, I think that's quite nice. I think the colour actually shows up grey on camera, but it isn't. It's almost like a sage green now. And go up into that skyline. There. Let's cap that off, and I'm going to turn that around so that you can see it's just really, really pale green. And a lovely pale blue. I've got little gaps missing. You can see the white coming through for my clouds, and that needs to dry before I can stick it down. So I'm just going to move that out of the way. Now I have got my camera dropped down really close today, and the reason for that is because I want you to see what I'm doing, errors and all. Yes, I will show you everything. There we are. Now let's start with this one, because this one's going to have the most colour in it. I've decided that this other one I'm going to do as yellow, because I just think it's a nice, you know, sunny contrast to have going on behind. Right, so some of these flowers I want to do in blue, and I want them to be a lot stronger than the blue of the sky, because the background, you know, fading off into the distance. So I haven't washed my brush again, and I'm not squeezing any water this time because I do want it to be a lot stronger. So just go in and find where you think that your petals are going to be, and I can see that these three flowers are of the same design, so I'm just going to do them in blue and not worry about it. And that one kind of connects. Just dab it in. Right, and then I think I'm going to go for my strongest yellow, because I've got two shades of yellow here. One looks quite orange. I've got 055 and 985, so it's the 985 I'm going to use at the front, and then on the other bottle I'm going to be using the 05. So I'm going to go in with some strong yellow. Now I am cleaning my blue off this time because I don't want my yellow to turn green, so I'm just scrubbing some of that down onto there. And I am going to clean my brush. And to clean your brush, just get your kitchen paper, squeeze your brush, and then just dab it until it comes up nice and clean. That's all you have to do. And if you haven't got a water brush, then you know, you're missing out. I mean, you can use regular brushes, of course, but it's just nice that you haven't got a jar of water on your table, especially me. So I'm going in for a dark yellow here, and if I have to go over this again, then I certainly will. So I'm just finding the edges without going too much into the blue, because I do not want that to be green, and you can see where your green elements are going to be on these flowers. And then I'm going here, and I think my wispy bits, I'm going to use quite a bit of pink in those. And because I want that a lot darker, I'm just going to scrub some yellow off here and just pick it up with a damp brush rather than squirting any water, and hopefully that will darken things up a bit. Right, so you can basically see the colouring formula that I'm using, and I just dibble it up and down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish colouring and I'll come right back. Okay, so I've coloured that in, and I did the cork and the jar in 912 and 291. So this now needs to dry, so I'm just going to move that off out of the way and just put it down there. And with this one, the jar and the cork will be using these two same colours, but I'm going to be using the paler yellow, and I'm also going to be using the green. So I'll colour those in because that's really easy, just yellow on all of them and green stems, and I will be right back. Right, so these are coloured and are sufficiently dry. This is the base one, so that's the base, but the top one, I know that I want it popped up on foam, so I'm going to turn that over. Now I'm using a Lena Craft foam because it's the narrowest one that I've got, but I still think that it's going to be, if I hold it up to myself, fractionally too wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off and I'm going to cut strips and then cut them in half. Now that's going to take quite a while, so I'm going to do that and I'll be right back. Right, so here's what I've got, and you can see the little bits of foam that I've cut and popped on there. Tried to put it in places where it can't be seen and where it's going to get the maximum of support. So this is going to go down on top of this, so I need to remove the backing off those little bits of tape. In fact, I'll remove the backing and come back and stick it. Right, so all the back out is off, so all I've got left now is a lot of sticky foam, lots of bits and pieces, and this needs to go down on top of here. So I think I may kind of like lift it up towards myself to see that I'm getting an accurate, which I'm not there. So just very carefully peel it off. As long as you haven't pushed it down, then you're normally okay, she says. So I'm just very gently peeling that away. I'm going to put it down again. I'm going to go into my corner, and I hope that you can see that. Trying to get it square. I need to line up my cork. And then give it a press. So now I've got some dimension. Even though it looks a bit twisted, it's going to be glued down flat in a bit. But if you look at the way it lifts off from the flowers behind it, you kind of get to see them a little bit more. So we've got our jar done. Give that a good firm press. I did put a couple of pads under like this leaf and this flower, so just giving it a squeeze into place. Right, and of course now the next thing if I bring in my 2 pieces of craft cardstock, that is the aperture and this is the background. So the background I need to tape down onto here. So that's what I'll do, and I'll come right back. Okay, so I stuck down the background with tape, and then I put foam tape all the way around. So you've got that plain craft back, and of course, as I said at the beginning, this was cut slightly smaller. So I've got my sky and I've got my grass. Now the next thing that I need to do, this is the way my brain is working, is I need to place that on top of there. And obviously I need to do it accurately, so I'm just going to peel the backs off these, and I think I might stand up actually just to make sure, or maybe not. You know, I can be a glutton for punishment. Yeah, and you've got to remember that you want it even. Ooh, well that wasn't too painful. Right, so now we've got our background. It's popped up on foam, and the foam is cut so that it's a little way back from the edge. You could, if you wanted to, pop acetate into your window so that it's shiny, and it could be left plain or it could be a shaker. Now there's already foam in here, and it's the same foam that's here, so it's the same depth. So the next thing I need to do is to glue my bottle down like that into position into my aperture. So I've got my Dollar Tree glue here. Hopefully it's going to squirt out, and I really don't want to be putting too much down because I don't want to disturb the watercolour that I've done. So I just want to make sure that when I press on it, it kind of stays where it's supposed to. If I'm shouting in the mic, it's because I'm standing over it. So I'm kind of going to go with that. Move my tapey bits out of the way, and then we need to drop it into our aperture, and of course it's wet glue, so you can just slide it along until it quite literally slots in. Right, I'm just going to sit down, shaking my camera. And this actually is a great way to do any scene card. Now because of my high humidity, and you can hear my AC running in the background there, I just want to hold this for a second and come right back. Right, well I'm going to call that done, and there is still a little bit of damp glue there I think. But isn't that pretty? You just got that lovely pale background, which probably isn't really that apparent. But then you've got that double layer of flowers, and you can see them in there. And it just sits back into that aperture. I really like that. I think that's really pretty. And as I said, you could use acetate and create a window and a shaker with it if you wanted to. Or you can tie a little bit of twine. And, you know, my little adhesive wax seals would probably look really nice with a little bit of twine around there and then a little wax seal or something. But I just absolutely love that. Just really simple. Obviously when you're watercolouring and you're going through different colours, it takes a bit of time, but it certainly wasn't a lot of effort, if you know what I mean. So I do thank you so much for joining me today. I'll just grab those so that we can have a look. I did measure these yesterday. So as usual, all links below. Have an absolutely awesome day. Bye.